there, and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Jo Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. We are on our summer break, off season, which means we do reruns and occasional interviews that I sort of pick up from the side of the road. I am on the road to the Augmented World Expo, the Augmented Reality World Expo, rather, in Santa Clara. Just for one day, I'm parachuting in like any good journalist would do. Get a couple sound bites, go back, and then put it on the air. No, it's a fascinating conference, but I can only go there for one day. So I have to try to get what I can. And again, I'm sitting on the SVVR stuff, as I have mentioned. No time to edit it. I apologize for that. Please stay tuned. We have compelling reruns, conversations with important people that you may not have heard. And if you heard them before, then just listen to them again. And I hope you get something out of it. Joe is busy in 1920s Berlin. 6th anniversary happened this last week. Big events. 1920s Berlin has been around for 6 years. Another example of Second Life providing sustainability, as long as you can sort of get the magic sauce together that makes a community tick. And little hint, it's community. So anyway, I don't want to blabber on. I'll see you guys next week. This week's rerun is Christopher Colosi, who under the name Colossus Linden was running the Lindex and the whole financial operation for a while at Linden Lab. The details are on our blog of his curriculum vitae. And Chris is now heading Globit, which is a digital currency for virtual goods and services within games and immersive worlds. So that's his new startup. And we talked to him a while ago. It's a fascinating conversation about economies in virtual worlds and how they reverberate into the real world. There's some food for thought about trickle down. Does it work or does it not? Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Anyway, you didn't hear that from me, because I'm not the financial expert, but Chris really is. So here's Christopher Colosi from Globit, formerly Colossus Linden. Enjoy the show.
So here's what's really funny. M came on, so CEO after Philip left. So this would have been 2009 maybe. He started a project to redesign the website. One of the things he believed was that a website redesign would make Second Life take off. We'll ignore my agreement versus disagreement with that assumption.
Sorry, now in hindsight, with 2020 hindsight, I could say this is akin to me saying buying new running shoes will make me a marathon champ.
So they started this project, and as if it didn't already have enough issues, instead of naming it something like Project Facelift, they named it 525, which was the date it was supposed to launch on. And we joked because I think they missed it by nearly like a year, and we thought like they might actually hit 525 of the wrong year. We threw like a party, I remember, like months after this date, and it was kind of hilarious because we're celebrating the 525 launch, and it's so obvious like how many months late it came in. And these were the shirts at the time. I think the thought clouds with, what have people been saying? We're kind of big, so they printed up a shirt. So this was an internal shirt for that launch.
But now, and this is actually great, I'll leave this in and I'll edit it down, but what are you doing now?
I am running a startup called Globit, Globit. It is a digital currency web service. So before I left Second Life, I was running the economy at Second Life. I was basically the Federal Reserve chair of Second Life. I chose when to print currency, how much to print, how to release it, what price to sell it at. I was assessing policy for should we have a tax, how does money flow through the system, can we charge people in Linden dollars instead of US dollars. So I had spent over a year really deep in it, really all 4 years on that side since I ran X Street.
Sorry, and we're going to jump back and forth because I actually wanted to fill that in later. You came with the startup that basically created Windlab. You were brought into Linden Lab. I mean, tell me the connection between going from environmental simulation thing to dollars and cents?
I would say it's a skill I always had and something I liked. Had I known how much I liked this stuff, I would have taken an economics class for sure in college. I kind of avoided it. This thought of, geez, I don't want to go be an iBanker and work 90, 120 hours a week. So instead, I went and started a tech company and worked 120 hours a week, Um, but there was a thought, people tell you what things are like. I've told folks, I gave an interview recently and I said, most people believe that doing accounting, bookkeeping is boring. And therefore, most people aren't going to find out if they like that until way later in life because most people won't try it. The assumption is boring. Well, it turns out I've done a lot of bookkeeping. I'm not saying it's the perfect thing for me, but I love systems that work out perfectly. So the concept of dual entry bookkeeping, where everything should work out to the penny, and there are no exceptions, and there's a bit of artistry in how you name accounts and where things go, is kind of beautiful, kind of relaxing. My first startup was video game and graphics, cutting-edge graphics studio, which was acquired by Second Life. I had done primarily computer science. That's what my degree was in from Harvard. When we started that company, there were 5 engineers, and we basically discussed what we were going to do. I'm someone who enjoys making other people more efficient. It's part of why my current company, when we get back to it, is a tools company, a services company. I don't need to be front and center. I love it when I can be a multiplier for other people. So I looked at it and I said, hey, I'm a good engineer, but you guys hate this stuff. If I was to manage operations, finances, bookkeeping, sales, do you guys, would you prefer to be able to focus 100% on code? And they said yes. It doesn't make sense for all of us to split our time. Context switching is really costly. So I took over doing all of that, all the financial side. One of the other 5 of us ran part of the business side, and I helped him on that with negotiations, with contracts, and I took over the entire financial side. So I ran our books and I managed our finances. So when I joined Linden, I handled the whole negotiation of our sale of our company. So I was the lead person negotiating that, myself and one of the other guys on business. When we finally came on to Second Life, we the 3 guys who were doing strictly engineering basically had set titles. And I said, listen, I can go back to being an engineer, being a computer scientist, but I'd like to stay on the strategy side. Do you want me to split my time? And I was told, we want you on business stuff. We like what you did here. We liked you managing this. So they had me start to look at acquisition opportunities. I did the license for the CSI project for them to do their own viewer. We're working on some other ones of those. I worked a little bit with Vivox. I eventually acquired XStreet. And that acquisition basically brought me into managing a little piece of the economy. I was always interested in the economy too. From the day I came, I started saying the Linden dollar should be that's our moneymaker. If I had my way on day one, I would have run with that and turned it into probably what I'm doing now with Globit.
In the sense to go outside and say to other people outside, this could be the global digital currency for anybody.
2007, I was pitching that. I couldn't get, executives on board, or I could, and I'd get an approval, but I'd get no resources. We had a problem at Second Life back then. I'm not sure how it is now, where we had twice as many ongoing projects as we had engineers. So when you had big vision like that, you really, it was hard to get it done unless Philip himself said, this is a major initiative for me. And he didn't like to do that because he wanted wisdom of the crowd to determine things. So there was that. There were also a couple of other folks who were really running that department. So you don't always want to step on toes either. So I kind of stepped back. I managed XStreet. At some point, the people who were running the economy, other Lindens, left, and so I took that over as a whole and started managing that, digging in deeper to the data. It was great. I spent a good year where, there were periods where I could spend a week doing a deep dive on data in the economy. I could do a podcast with you on time I dug in to look at trickle-down theory inside of Second Life. Economics isn't just about some macro or microeconomic theory. It isn't just about spending all your time running formulas. It, to some extent, can be very close to sociology.
I'm writing this question down for later because I'm reading a book right now. It's called How Much Is Enough, and it's a great book. It's written actually by 2 economists, but they also say that the problem right now is economists are the number one sort of social or scientists that are always being asked questions, and sociologists who dealt with this stuff, they're sort of not on vogue right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because one of the things is sociologists truly look at how folks work. A lot of economists tend to forget that people don't act in their best interest. So a lot of economic models people need to then put them in practice and learn, oh, this didn't work out like we planned. But there's a great simple study where, and I know it's a small amount of money. A lot of folks say if it was more, would they act like this? But it's a great simple study where I believe with two people, person doing the study gives one of them $20 and says, you can give however much of this you want to person B, says it to person A. You keep the rest, and he keeps what you gave him if he accepts it. And if he declines, you both get nothing. And if I recall, it was something like anything below $7 or $8 that person A gave to person B was like above 50% of the time was declined. Person B is choosing 0 over $7 or $8. And it's a great example of how someone actually chooses to screw themselves, pardon my language, because vengeance becomes more important, or showing that like you can't do that to me becomes more important than the money they're going to walk away with. Now there's a question: was it 20? If it was 20,000, would you not accept 5,000? But it very simply shows that people don't always act in their own best interests, and I don't think most people would have predicted that result. And certainly, I bet a lot of economists wouldn't have, whereas a lot of sociologists probably, or would be far more likely to go, I've studied how people act and emotionally how people are affected by things, and may have predicted something like that. So I think, I do think you need to be bright about it. You also need to look at data. A lot of times you got competing economic theories, and sure, both formulas can work, but one doesn't. And one holds true, or something in between holds true. Why is it?
I mean, that's what we're having right now. I mean, we're still having, as far as I'm concerned, trickle-down economics, for instance, never really worked. There is no proof, or is there? Because I'm totally open-minded. I mean, I'm on this side, but I'm also open-minded. I'm willing to entertain any other thing if you give me some proof, but nobody has given me any historical proof.
I've never seen proof. I can delve into why I believe that is, but I can tell you most people don't have 100% of the data in the economy. I was in an amazing place in Second Life where I had 100% of the data to look at, and I ran an assessment over, maybe it was a 6-month period, a year period. I group businesses by, mom and pop, like hobby businesses, competitive businesses that were losing money, breaking even, earning under $5,000 a month and over $5,000 a month. And assessing those groups, what I saw was that, exactly what I expected given what I've seen out of people in the world, which was that trickle down did not work at all. Now, there's some amount of information I don't have, because I don't know who for a business pays their employees in Linden dollars versus cashes out to pay in USD. So, caveat, asterisk, there's some information I don't have. I was looking at money leaving the system. But basically what I saw was that businesses, hobbyists, businesses losing money, businesses breaking even, if you gave them a discount or if they made additional money in a month, would reinvest 100%. To me, that's like the guy at the local shop who is going to take the extra money he makes and buy an extra loaf of bread from the grocery store. We'll come back to that in a second. It started to shift a little bit as you got to folks making under $5,000, where they would reinvest part of it, maybe close to all of it. You got north of $5,000 a month, and to the penny, they spent the same amount in Second Life, based every month. If you gave them a 5% discount, there was going to be 5% more profit in USD cashed out that month. They were going to take, and so now, could they be paying other bills with that? It's possible. But in all likelihood, that's exactly what happens in the real world, which is that goes into someone's pocket. Cashing out a Second Life is very akin to choosing to invest in China instead of the U.S. or another country, or to some extent buying a yacht, which is going into another maybe wealthy person's hand. What you see at the small end is, we had a velocity in Second Life. On average, for every Linden dollar purchased, it was spent 6 to 7 times, I want to say, if I recall the data accurately, before it was cashed out. The government looks at these things. A lot of people choose to not want to believe it, but when they say, hey, when we choose to spend and we give it to the right group of folks, $1 creates $7 in GDP growth, creates a bunch of tax dollars, creates a bunch of additional income and income taxes. It's not $1 of spending, it creates 7, 8, 20, however much it is. That happens when you give it to someone at the low level. They can't afford to not spend it. They can't save it. They've got bills to pay. They need to feed their family. When they go into a local shop, not a big chain. When you go to a McDonald's and you spend it at McDonald's, what is it? 17%, that includes executives at McDonald's, is the numbers I've seen go to the staff. So probably, since that includes executives, you spend $1 at McDonald's and 90% of that goes into a shareholder or a high-end executive. Only 10% comes back in. But you go into a local store and you buy a loaf of bread there, that goes to that guy who's running the local store, who's got expenses, probably doesn't own a lot of money. A large percentage of that goes to his staff. They spend it, and you got spending in local stores. When you give that same dollar to that wealthy person, that gets invested in somewhere, or it gets put into a savings account. Maybe that gets reinvested. It doesn't correlate to an increase in wages for folks down the scale. It doesn't make it down. I believe in trickle-up theory, which is, if you inject capital into the lowest rungs of society, it will flow up, and the wealthy will get wealthier as well.
So now you're at Linden Lab, and you're delving into the economy. You have the best playground. I mean, really, kind of these millions of mice that you're looking at. I'm sure residents would love that to be compared to mice. But now, then you leave Linden Lab, and now you formed Globit.
At Second Life, there wasn't really an interest in servitizing the system. There were a lot of bugs that weren't getting fixed. While I was there, we had no engineering team actually assigned to the Linden Dollar. When there was a problem, we had to find engineers.
That is mind-boggling. I mean, but that's dollars and cents.
This is what I had to deal with for 4 years. I loved my time there. We had great folks working there, but if you're wondering why didn't I do what I'm doing at Second Life and why did I leave, I need to have an impact.
Why do you think that wasn't seen as a priority, or what do you specifically mean? If you give a few examples, what wasn't worked on, what should have been worked on right away, what were the flaws of the system?
One of the big things is, one of the reasons we're building this as a service is I found that most people doing games really don't have that financial bug, that interest in that space. So great, it was something that enabled, but they wanted to produce a virtual world, the next version of the internet. They did not want to produce a financial global tool. There wasn't broad interest in that, and there were just competing visions. The issue wasn't that there weren't visions when I was there for Second Life. The problem was that instead of 2 or 3 initiatives, we had 10 or 12. And so you had one of two things. Either those weren't narrowed down, or I have a great analogy on that too, I'll give you in a second. Or what they were narrowed down to were just other things. So we had CEOs that maybe they saw that as a possibility, but they saw 4 other things as having a higher possibility. I can't fault them for that. People make good and bad decisions. It just didn't align with where I wanted to move the company to. And, we can't say that I was right. We didn't try that. I can say I think from where Second Life is that what we went after did not have exponential growth. So what we did choose, or the way we executed on those things while I was there, did not, propel us forward.
You're talking about a global financial tool, and I think that's what you're building now. But can I argue then just, the Linden Dollar, maybe I sound like an executive that you had to work with. Well, the Linden Dollar works just fine. People pay in, they cash out. I mean, what's the problem? What do you want?
Yeah, what were the problems? We had a bug at one point that wasn't noticed for a month and a half, and I think was costing us 6 figures a month. I found that, and it took some fixing to deal with that. I had merchants that I had to run reports. They could not get their full transaction history. They're trying to run 6-figure a month. They're trying to run 6-figure a month businesses, and they can't pull their transaction history record. I mean, I had meetings with them, asked them what they'd be willing to pay to have that fixed. I came back and tried to put that on the program, saying our biggest merchants want this as a feature. They're actually willing to give us money to get this built. And hey, you can't push it forward. Now, part of that's also, hey, I'm a person that is learning on the job. I'm not, I don't have a ton of large company experience. So perhaps there are some things I could have done to actually drive those things forward better. That I'm learning more. But the fact of the matter is, we didn't go after those things. Was I given a set of engineering resources, I would have gone after, and things I would have turned into into a system.
But now you are building this global financial tool that you mentioned earlier that you wanted to build, and you may also then take on Bitcoin and then get your revenge that you duly deserve.
So I would say we sit somewhere in between a Bitcoin and a Linden dollar. We are a centrally managed currency, so we're managed like Linden dollar. The Linden dollar is not like Bitcoin. We're not a cryptocurrency. Our currency are called Globits as well. That's the company name, is Globit. Right now, we're pegged to the U.S. dollar. We will go to a floating exchange like the Linden dollar has once we have enough supply and demand. You want to get to where it's stable before you do that. And we'll continue to launch those in other countries as we get enough merchants and consumers in those countries. On top of that currency, we have built a set of services or APIs that are easily integratable. They're web services. So through a RESTful API, we've also provided a number of wrappers in various code languages. So I believe we have a Unity plugin up. We've got might be a PHP wrapper, a couple of Python wrappers. So to try to make it easy. So one of the goals is you need to make it simple for folks to integrate. They get into the cart flow where they're ready to purchase, and they present them with a page where they go, hey, we use Globit. If you've got an account, link it. If you don't, create it. They click that. It sends the user to us. This is one of the 2 times that a user needs to be sent to our site. If they're a user and they're logged in, they just show up to a basically like you'd get at a social networking site. If someone was asking you to give you access to their Facebook friends list, you would get a, hey, will you authorize this application? One click. User goes back to that game site, and what you've now done is granted that game pull permissions to charge Globits out of your account. Okay, so one click to our site, one click back for you. So if you're not a user, you'd hit the sign up page. You'd sign up first. You'd approve the terms of service, and then you would get that. So now they store that in their back end. Whenever you log into them, they know that you're linked to us. Unless you revoke that, they have access. So they can do 3 things. They can display, or they've already linked. They can do 2 things. They can display the balance, so they can display your Globit balance, which we own in our system, on their site. And then they can request a transaction processed. So without you having to add any payment info on their site, you can add stuff to your card. You can do one click, whatever it is, and go, boom, I want to buy this sword for 30 Globits. You click that. They submit that request to us. We verify that the approval you've given is still active, and then we actually move those funds from your Globit account to the merchants, and we record that in each transaction history. If they're using us for inventory, we deliver the product. That's another service we provide, but it's all a la carte. Folks can do it themselves. If you don't have enough Globits, you click and you come to our buy page on our site. That's the only other time. The reason we do have folks send to us is both a trust and security issue. It's also because that way the folks who integrate our service only need to integrate one thing, our service, which is really simple, basically failure or success. We on our end deal with all the complexities of integrating various payment methods, and we'll continue to add those. And that way that USD or whatever current real-world currency to Globit transaction happens with us, with Globit, and then the users only have a Globit transaction with the products. And just like Linden, those merchants can turn around and sell those Globits to cash out, or they can then go use them with other products.
You need to get merchants in the boat, and the more merchants you have, the more you can sell to the consumer that, hey, we got this system that is accepted by all these merchants.
The biggest challenge with any payment mechanism, and certainly with a currency, is that you need to build both sides of the market at the same time. The way we've gone about that is we built a set of services that while it might be a risk to come with someone early, or where we don't have a consumer base yet to say we've got millions or billions of dollars in, we've built a system that will save you as an engineer months of engineering time. You don't need to become a payment specialist. We're not charging 30% like other similar services out there are. I won't say they're the same because we do a lot more and do it better, but we're charging 2%. So, we believe you should, just because you're selling digital goods doesn't mean that you should be gouged because you have a big margin. Merchants integrating us, especially apps and games that want to use a digital currency and price their goods in a digital currency, which, by the way, boosts monetization. I found this in Second Life. We get, 100% of their monetizing users become our users. So our early partners are getting us our early consumer user base. And as we grow to 20 small indie game partners, and that brings us to 10,000 end users. We leverage those 10,000 end users to go after larger partners, and then to go after virtual worlds, places that have marketplaces, because we add even more to a space that isn't just consumer to merchant, but one that allows their users to transact with each other. I'd actually love Second Life, believe it or not, to come over to the Globit. And I believe we could both make Second Life more money and provide a better service for Second Life users.
I gave up the Deutschmark when the euro came. I'm still with the euro. I would give up the Linden dollar for Global. But see, we haven't even clarified it in this interview yet. Now, are you going after digital goods and services, or real world, or both?
First, digital goods and services, whereas eventually we'll be competitive with high dollar transactions. Early on, the way we're set up and the way we're reducing cost on low end transactions means you'd probably have a higher fee on high end transactions. I won't go into that, but also there's higher risk. With a digital goods transaction, it's a lot easier to deal with chargebacks. Someone hasn't shipped a $3,000 television, they've shipped a digital good. If you have a chargeback, they haven't, that company didn't make a profit, but they haven't lost a $3,000 inventory item. So we want to get our systems. It's not to say I'll turn someone down, but we're not going after that area. We want to know that our systems are rock solid before we have users that are looking at large item potential losses. And we want to go after microtransactions where we add the most value. As we grow and scale, there are a couple of big things. One, we believe we can go into real world goods, and we can eventually compete with standard payment processing methods and reduce the cost of transactions globally. We're at 2% now. In the long run, 10 years from now, I want to be at 1% on transactions of any size. And internationally, and the Linden dollars, I've seen this through our exchanges and through how people use it, you can get rid of currency conversion fees. So digital or real world, if you're buying something internationally, we can get to where that doesn't cost anything.
Now with Renaissance, virtual realities in everybody's mind and mouth and so on and so forth, Facebook is building something. We don't know what they're building, but with you, they will undoubtedly have to have some sort of a currency if they're in fact building sort of a metaverse.
Facebook did actually build its own currency at one point. A lot of folks don't realize there was, I think it was the Facebook buck at one point. From what I read and heard, Facebook believed that games were using it, but a lot of other products, a lot of other goods that could be sold were not being sold on Facebook, and their belief was it was because people didn't understand a digital currency. And so they got rid of their digital currency and they just created a payment method. My belief is that they got that wrong. It wasn't the digital currency, it was their 30% fee. Most folks don't want to pay a 30% fee. People were forced into it. They went from having a low fee to suddenly having 30%. Facebook, I believe, took over 2 months to pay you. I understand and I believe the right way for platforms to monetize is through purchases, in-app purchases. So I don't think that's wrong. I think it's wrong to force folks to have to use yours, to have to do a different integration. So what we want to do is say, hey, do no work on your end. Set us as the currency to use, make it easy for your users, make it understood, and then what percentage do you want? You want 5% for your essentially distribution network, access to your end users? Then when someone does a transaction in that on your platform, we'll charge 7%. Or some revenue share that we agree to. 2% will go to us, 5% will go to you. Someone building on Facebook now knows, well, I don't have to do any more work, and if I want to launch it on Facebook, I'm going to pay 7% instead of 2%. Is it worth an extra 5% for the customers I'm going to get? Guess what? If they're launching in 7 places too, what they're going to make is going to depend on where their customers choose to use it. If they'd rather use it from the web, if they'd rather use it from an iPhone or an Android device or Facebook, you're going to get charged the fee based on that platform, which actually is very closely aligned with the value that distribution network is adding, because they are creating a space where a user is choosing to access that content. Now, maybe it's 5% in one area and maybe it's 15 or 20 somewhere else. I can't make a platform set their rate lower, but we can certainly work to drive that down. And when it becomes one integration and therefore someone can launch everywhere at the same time, that person can choose to drive their users. If you set too high a price as a platform, you're going to have all your app developers trying to drive their users to their web version to use that.
But let me ask you, because in the future of the metaverse, this is how I see it. I see many metaverses or virtual worlds with Oculus and other interfaces. So it's a much more natural interaction, and all these might have different currencies, and that goes back to your earlier prediction. And I think that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's quite realistic that maybe then Lab may give up their internal in-house currency and wants to maybe offer the payment or offer, if I go in world, I can pay maybe with Linen or I can pay with Globus, let's say.
You've got folks right now, yeah, exactly, and you can do a switch to accepting both. Imagine this right now, right now folks that are making money need to cash that out, they lose some money on the exchange. Imagine if all of a sudden you could pay your AWS tier in Globits. Imagine you could buy those servers you need somewhere that you could pay an employee. Like, the minute you don't need to move your money out, there's a lot of benefit you get from being on a single currency used across areas. And when you move to the digital space, you remove money being shuffled around to banks. You remove this ancient architecture. I'm going to call it, not that it's ancient, but this old architecture that has a lot of costs.
You said this earlier. If I would cash out with Globits or at any point in time, I get it out.
We've got a margin built in to cover payment processing fees. Once we launch a floating exchange, you'll, like you have with Second Life, have more of an ability to set whether you need your money out quickly or whether you want the best rate you can get. We're not there yet.
What I wanted to ask before we wrap it up is, I live outside of your bubble. I live physically close, beautiful California. Apple, iPay, and everybody is going out there with trying to abandon cash and then also credit cards. But what do you think? You say this is the future, but my question is about acceptance of digital interaction. There's a backlash against this. There's a need to kind of connect with physical things, or however they phrase it.
I'll go beyond that. I don't think it's even a need to connect. People inherently don't like change. Once they figure something out, there is a set of the population that tries new things. Those are early adopters of products. When you look at things like crossing the chasm, and those are the folks. It's a small part of the population. You need to get those folks that are resistant to change to want to use something. It's why there are great new payment methods that are less expensive, and they fail and fail and fail and fail and fail. It's why other major companies have done NFC and it hasn't succeeded. Why? Because people are used to taking a credit card out of their wallet or cash out of their wallet. They understand it, and frankly, it's simpler, and they have incentives to use it. They get reward points. One of the reasons we're going after apps and really specifically gaming right now is they're already likely in that space to try things, but they're in a place where they can't go elsewhere. So that is a space where I think adoption is likely to happen. I think folks are missing the boat sometimes when they are jumping right to brick and mortar because there's so much money that happens there and they want to dominate that space, and they're trying to jump to the middle of the curve. And you need to start somewhere, get people on in the digital space, get them on with games and apps, get them to where they start to get comfortable using Globits, seeing them in a lot of different places, and they start to go, hey, geez, I made some money last week. It would be awesome if I could spend this in the coffee shop because I don't really have enough that I want to cash out, but man, if I could tip with it, and then all of a sudden get some users coming to you. Then make it a feature, something that folks are waiting for that's available at brick and mortar beside payment methods. Make it something where, we can decrease the cost to the merchant and the consumer. And there's an incentive for that consumer to use, our system. So we're taking a different approach. We're not going after brick and mortar. Do I want to be in there eventually? Yes. But I don't believe that's the right day one adoption method, at least not for us. It doesn't mean Apple can't do it. They've got a lot of power. They've got a lot of devices in hands. But, I've got a lot of reasons that I'm not going out of my way to use it. One of which being that Apple has shown that they make moral decisions on what they want to let their users have access to. I am not comfortable with a company that has done that having control of 80% of the payment space. I've seen credit cards companies throw their weight around, and it's and it's not something I like. What happens when Apple makes the same moral decisions they have with apps on payments, and they shut off a bunch of businesses? That should be something that worries folks because they have a history of this. I'm not pulling that out of the air.
You people in Silicon Valley, you are basically, with all your automation and stuff like that, you're gonna destroy everything, and then it's gonna be just 5 people, and everybody else is sort of like a little slave here.
This is why I say ethics is a major thing. You got to think about, do you believe that right now there's a belief that if you look at companies, that investors should get 50, 80%, or investors plus founders, employees should get a tiny amount, if anything. They're very far away from, the co-op type principle. When you look at, folks at Walmart or McDonald's that are struggling, other companies, I call those two out because they've been in the news. It's not to say there isn't enough money there. Someone did an assessment, only 17% of McDonald's cost is its employees, and that includes all executives. That means, you can double wages and only increase with only a 17% cost increase, and that's across the board. What a lot of folks don't realize, they believe that if you raise, everyone's wages combined $1,000, that company needs to take that in. And they don't realize, unless you've been in trading and stock, that there's dividends that go out to shareholders. There's sometimes people are fired or wages are cut to get share prices to go up, because when you look at how a company is formed right now, a C corporation, an S corporation, your duty is not to your employees. Your duty is to your investors. You have a duty, a legal responsibility. There are actually companies that have been sued by shareholders because they believe they've paid their employees too much, and they've actually won in court.
And what will you be doing with all your VC millions of dollars when everybody has Globits? You will sell us out?
Hopefully I can use that to push some of the principles that I believe in, and improve the world. I got to get there first. I mean, I have an interest in politics, but I'm not in politics right now because, I don't know if I could be successful being the principled person that I am when folks expect you to change things to take money. So I become independently wealthy. It's a lot easier to go in and have an impact and not be beholden to anyone. So what we brought this around to is, for folks that really want to see a better world, they need to go out and become members of Globit. Spend money. If you're running a product, accept them, because the real ultimate plan is that I personally become rich and then change the world with my my views.
Well, that was Christopher Colosi, formerly Colossus Linden, from Globit. Information on his blog about Globit is on our blog. I'm driving back. As you listen to this, I'm driving back from the Augmented Reality World Expo. Quite fascinating and frankly exhausting, but also really, really worth it. Now I'm in a traffic jam down south on the 101. It's crazy. People do this every day. We need virtual reality to advance much more quickly, and augmented reality, so that we don't have to commute anymore. Well, I don't have to normally commute. But anyway, lots of really fascinating conversations on tape to be spread out across the summer on this very podcast. Big highlight: Rick Johnson and Jerry Ellsworth from Cast AR. Are you listening in RFA? Big Cast AR fan, and I have some interview with Jerry and Rick, really fascinating stuff. And I also will be visiting their headquarters in Mountain View, so that's exciting, and we'll report back from that. Cast AR is really something that me, as an AR outsider, I do find really quite compelling. What else? Yeah, I guess that's it for the show. Of course, as you listen to this show, the talk at Augmented Reality World Expo about the philosophical implications of immersive spaces or something like that has already happened, and you might already have that video on YouTube. That's a talk, a panel discussion with Philip Rosedale, Peter Gray from Linden Lab, Senior Director of Global Communications, and Eric Romo, CEO of AltVR. AltSpace. What am I talking about? I'm really tired. AltSpace, the Second Life for the goggle generation. And who else is on the panel? There's somebody else on this panel. Anyway, you will have it on YouTube probably by the time this podcast comes out. Enjoyed. Fascinating conversation. Relevant. The philosophical implications. I'm tired. I'm in traffic. You're at home. You're in Second Life, and you're listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And next week, more possibly reruns, or time permitting. I get to edit all that stuff that is on my digital recorder. Thank you so much for listening and supporting this show. Bye. Have a great weekend.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Jo Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Leap Motion, Stitcher, Fateware by Damien Fate, Giza Creations, Arrows Avatars, Maven Homes, Mad Bee Productions, Bot Girls Identity Circus, Ison, Caravel Design, Vika Creations, Humanoid Animations, Loki Elliott, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Fallen Gods Incorporated, What's Next, Abranimations, Blue Moon Enterprises, Avacon, and Landscapes Unlimited. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar, Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.